I would like to welcome everybody to the Cypriot strand of the morning session of the SoE Experience project. Apologies for this delay and mix-up. I don't know, Yorgo, something was problematic with the initial link, I think. But now that we are okay and we can go on, it will be very nice to welcome all, both the speakers and the attendees of this morning session of our online school. I guess, Yorgo, you have already explained to everybody that the meeting is being recorded. So whoever wants or whoever objects to this, please let us know through the chat, and we will act accordingly. A few words about the SoE Experience project. The SoE Experience project is actually a continuation of another human-related project funded by EASME, which was the mentor project, and the SoE Experience project, which is an EC-funded project. I think now the authority is called EMFF, actually focuses on two major pillars. The first one has to do with the mentoring, and the second one has to do with training and the familiarization for specific professions of the maritime industry. Now, the professions varies from, I don't know, they range from a marine surveyor and captain and engineer on board ships, up to a welder or a cruise cook. So we try to cover a long range of professions, and we are, let's say, approaching the issues of interest in a twofold manner. The conventional one, which is that we are trying to do face-to-face workshops, summer schools, contests, student contests, and goes on and on. But as we all understand, due to the pandemic, these are like going a little bit more towards the digital side. But we are hoping, for example, that our first workshop, our second dissemination workshop, will be our first face-to-face event for the project, but we will convey and transmit this message later on within the week. But the second pillar, the second way of approaching things is more modern in the sense that we are trying to incorporate and integrate new technologies, both for mentoring. So we have developed an online mentoring process based on a platform with a very good, let's say, audio and visual capabilities. We can have sessions online. There's a big repository. And opening a parenthesis here, it is now that we are trying to, to formulate a pool for mentors and to select some mentees. So whoever is interested into either becoming a mentor or being a mentee, now is the time to approach either myself or our Cypriot partners, University of Cyprus, CMMI, or CCCI, in order, to get into the list and try. We will try to accommodate for the mentors a big number of attendees, of mentees, with a 3 mentoring session scheme, so as to have a complete way of, of bringing out the best possible results. Now, for the training and familiarization part of the SoE Experience, the modern ways, they comprise, let's say, 360 videos. They comprise VR videos, virtual reality videos, and we are also have entered into the gamification zone, which means that we will try to teach people with and through games. Now, with these people here, I mean, our targets is mainly students, in the sense university students or students above 18 years old, young professionals, so early 20, late 20. This is more or less our target audience, and we will have, let's say, an activity focusing also on younger children, on students from, let's say, 15 to 18, in the sense that this is the age, more or less, that most of the young kids where, they decide what they want to do. So we want to get them to know maritime related professions and the maritime related field and careers. Now, specifically for this Cypriot morning session for our online school, as you have seen through the agenda, we have like two major strands. The first one is devoted to the human factor in the maritime sector and of the future. So we are very happy to have with us Zacharias Siokouros, who is the CEO from CMMI. And the second talk will be given by Mr. Haralambous from Petronav Ship Management Limited. He's the GM there. Thank you, both of you, and we are waiting for your very interesting presentations. And the second strand is focusing on new and emerging technologies in the maritime industry. Both speakers come from CMMI. In particular, we have Dr. Ioannis Kyriakidis and Yorgos Malioupas, senior scientist and associate scientist, respectively, of CMMI, and they will be talking exactly about emerging technologies and the future of what we're expecting in the sense of operating and working within the maritime industry. So, Yorgo, I guess that we are ready to go initially to Zacharias. Zacharias, just please note that we will have like 20-25 minutes for the talk, and leave 5 minutes for any potential questions. The questions can be either live or through the chat. So, Yorgo, the floor is back to you, and Zacharias, we welcome you on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Redigos, for opening the session, and I would like to ask Mr. Zacharias Siokouros to proceed with his speech.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Nikos, for the introduction. Obviously, this morning's small crisis highlights the complexities out of the new technologies and how we all need to adapt. In the past, we would be shouting to the organizers to get the microphone running. Now we had to sit and wait for somebody somewhere to make a link without even understanding what they are doing. So,
Zacharias, once more apologies for our mix-up. Actually, we had to go through Nicosia to Piraeus to Polytechnio to Zographou, and going back to have the link ready. So it's a long way. Sorry for that.
Nikos says, I'm a poor naval architect. I don't understand many of the things you just mentioned. So let's go to my session. Hopefully, I will manage to share my screen with you so that I can go with my presentation. Let me see if I'm successful. So hopefully you can see my screen. Do you all see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Let me start. So my subject today is the maritime transport skills in the digital era. Very relevant to what is happening today in the industry, the changes that are changing, the changes to technologies that are affecting our life. Just a minute, because I still face some difficulties. So, dear all, the maritime transport is, of course, as we all know, the backbone of on which most of the global economy rests. The shipping transfer 95% of everything we have around us, so it's an important sector. And technology and digitalization are transforming today the shipping industry, like most of the other industries. Smart ships, as we sometimes call them, are coming into creating demand for a new generation of competent, highly skilled maritime professionals. Of course, the shipping sector is also important in Europe and the European economy, and has been the catalyst for economic development and prosperity throughout its history. Shipping is also an important source of employment, both on board and ashore. Shipping-related jobs are often knowledge-intensive and depend on individual and group experience. Therefore, there is a genuine EU interest not only to increase the attractiveness of a seafaring career for EU nationals, both male and female, now, especially youngsters, but also in providing the industry and the wider maritime cluster with skilled and experienced personnel, whilst at the same time ensuring the competitiveness of the European maritime industry. Consequently, the main concerns of the European social partners in the field of maritime transport are today the current mismatch between the demands of the industry and the supply of graduates from the educational institutions, as well as a deficit of skills developed on board or applied ashore. The other main concern is the response to global trends and changes with respect to the new skills needed to deal with the changes and challenges faced by world shipping in the near future, with the most important requirements linked to the environment-friendly performance of shipping. We all know about the Green Deal and the decarbonization of shipping and all the new alternative fuels that we are expecting and the new technologies. And of course, the increased digitalization, for which some other colleagues will follow later. So seafarer education and training requiring more cooperation between European shipping companies and maritime training institutions is the other area of concern, so that we ensure that products of the educational system meet the qualifications and skills required by the industries, therefore enhancing and ensuring employability. Obviously, these challenges and these concerns are recognized by the European Commission. The president, actually, of the Commission, Ms. von der Leyen, has recently stressed that the best investment in our future is the investment in our people. Skills and education drive Europe's competitiveness and innovation, but Europe is not fully ready. I, meaning she, will ensure that we use all the tools and funds at our disposal to redress this balance. So obviously, the challenges I'm going to refer to in my next slides are challenges faced by the economy in Europe, in all the sectors of the economy, and is well now recognized. So moving to my next slide. Yes. So as we already said, we live in a time of transitions. The twin green and digital transitions are reshaping the way we live, work, and interact. The EU's move to a resource-efficient, circular, digitalized, and climate-neutral economy and the wide deployment of artificial intelligence and robotics are expected to create new jobs, while other jobs will change or even disappear. Demographic change will require Europe to draw on all of its talents and diversity. At the same time, it will also generate new job opportunities. These transitions show the need for a parallel shift in skill sets to reap the full potential. The COVID pandemic has, of course, as we all know, accelerated the digital transition. We are now in a meeting, in a conference where we talk online. So that was the result of the pandemic rather than anything else. The limitations of our current digital preparedness were often also repeated. The pandemic has highlighted the digital skills gap that already existed, and new inequalities are emerging as many people do not have the required level of digital skills or are in workplaces or schools lagging behind in digitalization. The pandemic has also significantly impacted the career opportunities for many people in Europe. So now more than ever, the EU needs this shift on skills, one that delivers a bold skills agenda for jobs to drive the twin transition and ensure recovery from the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic, and in order to strengthen sustainable competitiveness, ensure social fairness, build resilience. So, because of all that, in July 2020, the Commission put forward an ambitious agenda to guide the recovery efforts in the employment and social area. The focus is on skills and vocational education training. And the proposals are now an important contribution to the recovery plan for Europe. The Pact of Skills developed by the European Union is a pansectoral and open to stakeholders pact. It will initially focus on those industrial ecosystems heavily affected by the current crisis and the priority areas identified in the European Green Deal, for which reskilling strategies are essential to push forward the recovery, and it covers other ecosystems and areas. It brings together all the stakeholders, private and public, which share the objective of upskilling, reskilling Europe's workforce in order to enable the people to participate in these twin transitions. All these stakeholders are expected to sign a charter which will define the key principles that are essential for this process to take place. Moving to my next slide. So, as we highlighted, digital transformation and disruptive innovation have become popular terms in recent years. Digitalization is having a disruptive effect on the industry, while it challenges existing business models and creates new opportunities. Maritime professionals' competence and skill sets need to be transformed in response to the rapid development of onboard technologies such as the ICT and sustainable technologies. Maritime transport needs to boost a range of new skills, including big data analysis, software development, artificial intelligence, robotics, chemistry, electronic engineering, and a new range of soft skills. The maximization of the use of these skills across the ecosystem supply chain should be encouraged. So, what are the many challenges that the maritime sector faces? There is a current and expected future shortage of maritime professionals. Maritime transport industries create many jobs directly and indirectly. It is estimated that some 70% of shipping-related shop jobs are knowledge-intensive, high-quality jobs. These jobs largely depend on former seafarers who possess expertise, skills, and a unique working attitude. A possible shortage of maritime professionals, both seafarers and onshore workers, may therefore be considered as a significant risk for long-term sustainability and competitiveness of the industry, especially if available human resources needed by the industry fall below a certain level. However, a shortage of maritime professionals, both current and future, is not the result of any single cause. It is a consequence of numerous factors, some of which are not likely to be influenced by the industry itself. Moreover, some are more interrelated with predominant work culture and social drivers than with working conditions. Recent changes within the maritime industry, such as the concentration and vertical integration of operators, digitalization, further corrective actions due to the pressure for the greening of shipping and the automation of operations, and particularly those caused by the large-scale implementation of advanced technology systems, significantly influence the current and future skills required by maritime professionals. Due to these advances, maintenance of high training standards and professional competence of maritime professionals is essential to ensure safe, secure, and environmentally sound shipping operations, both by sea and land. Then we have the mobility issues. The traditional labor mobility in the maritime sector mainly involves seafarers who have from positions on board ship to positions ashore, who move from positions on board to positions ashore, transferring the basic professional knowledge, expertise, and work ethics to other non-maritime specialists, and this is happening throughout the industry. This process ensures the retention of talents, knowledge, skills, as well as human resources to the industry ashore, as well as to many safety critical roles. However, horizontal mobility of seafarers from ship to shore is often hampered by lack of information about onshore job availability, recognition of maritime qualifications, training courses covering shore job requirements, and by lack of horizontal skills required for shore jobs. In addition, vertical labor mobility requires specific upskilling or retraining. Another major challenge is communication. The lack of cooperation and communication between knowledge providers, competent authorities, and the industry has occurred for decades in maritime activities, particularly in those related to shipping. The main reasons for unsatisfactory communication are usually attributed to different culture and organizational schemes, caused mostly by very different drivers affecting various partners. The current knowledge providers are, as a rule, limited by legislation in force, which does not provide for flexible adoption of curricula to match emerging needs. Therefore, to ensure the smooth development and steady delivery of a properly trained workforce, cooperation between knowledge providers and the industry, with authorities being heavily involved is crucial. Strengthening the cooperation between the education and employment side is crucial to fill the skill gaps. Then we have the core skill sets. Another important issue caused by the rapidly accelerating changes in technology is the set of professional skills, core skills that a person or a group of persons has to master. In the past, a narrow, well-defined set of skills was successfully used for decades. Today, a set of necessary skills for a particular job might be of only partial use when applying for a similar job, even within the same industry or sector. Consequently, employees need a broad set of skills or ability to update or upgrade their set of skills as may be appropriate in order to achieve their full potential, both at work and in society. For this reason, besides the skills needed as a maritime professional, a person is looking for a job ashore needs a set of transitional skills as well as sector-specific and cross-sectoral skills. And then we have the digital skills, which includes, which are, as already highlighted, will enable a person to use or interact either professionally or as a citizen with different digital services. But my colleagues that follow today in the program will address and talk on this. And then we have the green skills. We all know of the new agenda in the European Union, the Green Deal, and the subsequent impact on the skill sets. And this, of course, will apply also in the maritime sector. Again, another colleague that follows will address this specific area. Moving now to my next slide, which is just a diagram presenting this process of acquiring skills for a shore-based job by people who have been on board the ships. It shows all these issues that I previously addressed. So people who have been working on board and want to move for a shore-based job, they need to acquire a set of skills. Going to the next slide, which refers to the what we call the skills gap and the need to close the skills gap. It has been observed during the years that the nature of work in every job field is somehow changing due to what we earlier said. As a result, the skills that employers and companies value and depend on are also transforming, creating this so-called skills gap. To make it clear, skills gap is the difference among the techniques required for a job and the skills that an employee actually performs. Therefore, because of the skills gap issue, a potential employee must not be able to completely operate the tasks of the job. However, when it comes to the shipping industry, technological advances have also contributed significantly to skills gap issues within the sector, as crew are required to have skills beyond what is mandatory by the relevant maritime regulations and more specifically STW. So the skill needs that maritime professionals need to possess these days are listed on the slide. So it's beyond the usual technical skills. So they need to possess skills on the maritime economy, maritime law, ships technologies, of course, green and digital skills, and the transversal skills. And in the future, there will be a more need for digital, sustainable, transversal and transitional and leadership skills. I will not talk too much on this slide. A colleague of mine will come later on to address digital skills. I already mentioned some of them, so going quickly to the next one. I will briefly refer to the skills coming out of the Green Deal. So the need to comply with the requirements and the challenges coming from the decarbonization will require new skills. we will have a ship which is aiming for a net zero emission by 2050. We'll have skills related to alternative fuels, renewable resources, the modification or retrofitting of the internal combustion engines, which currently burn fossil fuel, the system integration, the optimization, the improvements in vessel performance, the ship optimization, weather routing, the ship design, even the processes within the shipyards will require new kind of skills, the electric dives in view of the electrification of many type of ships, fuel cell, power generation, all this will impose a new set of skills for our future professionals in this sector. And concluding with a slide I always like to put in my presentations when it comes to people, there is a quote attributed to Monsieur Antoine de Saint-Exupéry that says that if you want to, sorry, just a moment, my computer. That if you wanted to build a ship, don't bring the people together to collect wood and don't assign them the tasks and work, but rather first teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. And I like to highlight this because it links very much to our efforts at CMMI, but also generally in the maritime sector to promote the so-called ocean literacy, that we need to bring the younger people and the kids closer to the sea before we start talking to them on more complex skills and competencies. Thank you very much. I understand now there is a session for people who want to ask or raise any issues relevant to my presentation, and I will be pleased to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Zacharia. Yeah, Yorgo, I'm still here. Thank you, Zacharia, for your very interesting presentation. I think that you gave a very nice, framework and a very nice, let's say, picture of what is coming. Can you elaborate a little bit more on digitalization, what we should be expecting about this term digitalization in shipping, and what is your perspective to this? Thank you.
Thank you, Nikos. Digitalization has many aspects, and some more experts than me, colleagues of mine from CMMI, I think they will have also a presentation later on. But from my own experience in this area, digitalization, first of all, affects the ships. If we start from what is the main asset of our industry, which are the ships. Ships are changing. In the past, we used to have people in the engine room with their watches and 3 or 4 people in every watch looking after the equipment. Most of the ships these days are having unmanned machineries, and information are collected from sensors, and they end up in screens, and people have to master these technologies, which are mostly digital, in order to make sure that the ship perform its operation and remain safe. And this is a very simple example. Then you have communication. In the past, when I first joined my first ship, we used to connect with the sea once a day, with the office, sorry, and our families once a day through the radio, and we were still using the Morse as a tool. These days we have satellite antennas on the ships, and people, and there are no longer radio officers on board the ship. So the officers and the crew on board the ships, they have to also master the communication tools. These are some examples, but the changes are moving now dramatically because we also have now tools for optimizing the operation of the ship. There are tools which give information to the office and on the ship on what is the optimum, let's say, routing for the ship, so that they avoid bad weathers, currents, and so on. There are new technologies on the bridge that let them plan their voyages better, more safe, and so on. But at the same time, we have the big challenge on board the ships that the crew are getting smaller and smaller, less people on board the ship because of these new technologies. And then, of course, this causes more social issues on board the ships. They causes what we sometimes call fatigue or many other issues of interaction of the people. A lot of crew these days spend a lot of their time in the cabin with their laptops, connecting with their families, and as a result, people on board the ship, they don't talk too much to each other, they don't exchange ideas, and they don't pass their sea of experience from the older ones to the younger one on board the ships. So these are just some examples. And if we move in the office, I think we are all, most of us, we are now living in this environment. We know the challenges of digitalization. An example we had this morning, we have to communicate a lot and talk to each other remotely and meet remotely. So people need suddenly to acquire skills that are not even provided by the legislation. So for those who join a ship, their education is based on STCW. And STCW, being an instrument of IMO, cannot be easily updated. As you know, it takes years or decades sometimes to update the STCW. And STCW, for those unfamiliar, is the Bible of education for shipping professionals. And this has to be agreed at IMO, where more than 180, 90 countries are members. So it's a complicated process. And I stop with this, Nikos.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Indeed, you know, when you have a kid of 15, 16 years old, you can understand what digitalization means. That it's very interesting. You know how it goes. Okay, thank you very much. Yorgo, the floor is on you, so you can pass it to the next speaker. Thank you, Zacharia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vendigos. Thank you, Zacharias, for this speech. Now we are moving to our next presentation, which is given by Mr. Dimitris Haralambous, General Manager in Petronav Ship Management Limited. We cannot hear you if you...
Okay, how about now?
Now it's good.
Okay. You can also see my presentation.
Yep. You're up and running. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to cover a subject which is basically, I'm going to talk about working on board, which is a unique sea experience as well as live experience. And I will briefly tell you what I have done so far. And basically, I'm going to talk about my own experience and my own professional, I would say, life, which enables me to talk to you 20, 23 years old, so that you consider working on board or shipping industry in general as an option for your career. So basically, from 93 to 2000, I worked on board for a few years, starting from a bar waiter. Then pretty much for 17 years, I worked as a short trade manager, again, within the shipping industry and more specifically the cruise industry. Then life circumstances were such that enabled me or allowed me to work on board again for 2 years almost. And since October 21st, I've been a general manager of Petronas Ship Management. So basically, I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I don't work on board, but we employ people that work on board. So this is what I have done, and I'm going to try and give you some of my experiences, both personal and professional, and maybe what I have done could be something that is of interest to some of you. So again, nowadays job opportunities are less than before. 20 years ago, most of the people ended up in the public sector or the semi-public sector in Cyprus, like Cyprus Airways, SITA, banks, they know this, which is not an option anymore. Also, in my opinion, a lot of professions are saturated. So basically, what I'm thinking is that people in your age, sometimes they have to think outside the box. And in my opinion, again, working on board is an outside the box option. Of course, I don't want to say that this is for everybody, but it could be applicable or it could be preferable to some of you. So, because again, it doesn't mean that everybody can work on board. The same way it doesn't mean that everybody can be an accountant or everybody can be a research scientist. So, but this is one option that may or may not be of interest to you. To work on board, there are basically two directions to simplify things. One is that you go through a marine academy and you end up being in the deck department, ending up as a captain, or going through the engine department and becoming a chief engineer. This is the on-board employment of that direction, which eventually it ends up, or it should end up, in a short-side position, either in the marine department or in the technical department of any shipping company. The second option, which doesn't require you to go through a marine academy, is through a cruise ship. For example, myself, I had a restaurant and travel administration university degree, and I ended up working on board a cruise ship, basically the floating hospitality outlet. On-board employment can offer a lot of things. It can offer adventure, it can offer life experiences, it can offer education, because education in life is not only what we learn at school, but it's much more than that. So this kind of employment can offer that kind of education. It can offer money, you can save money, because pretty much you work, it's duty-free, and you don't pay any taxes, you don't pay any utility bills, so you can save money. It offers life-lasting relationships, and you get the chance, as you will see from my presentation afterwards, that you can do a lot of traveling without having to pay. On the contrary, the technical of that. So, cruise industry, okay, now with COVID, things have changed dramatically. I'm optimistic that things will go back to normal sooner or later. But cruise industry before COVID, just two quick tables. This was by CLIA, which is the cruise line industry, the Cruise Line International Association, which is like the association of the cruise companies, pretty much. So these are statistics from CLIA, and you can see there was an upward trend in regards to the passengers that used to take vacation through onboard a cruise ship. Of course, now things with COVID have changed dramatically. And also, briefly, this is where most of the ships are. So basically, you can see that there are cruise ships all over the world. Most of them are in the Caribbean, but there are in Alaska, in Australia, in China, everywhere. So this was a picture of the cruise industry before COVID. Also, cruise ships, I'm sure you've seen them already, but these things have changed a lot in the last decades. I'm sure you've seen this in the internet. The first ship is the Titanic, and the second one is the Oasis of the Seas. So as you can see, things have changed dramatically in this industry as well as in all other industries. So cruise industry is not the same like it used to be. So again, I think this is where we stand at the moment. Working on board. Now, again, working on board, this also applies to being in a cruise ship or on another ship as a deck or engine cadet or officer. So this is from the website of Royal Caribbean, which is a company that has the biggest market share within the cruise industry. We take pride in embracing different cultures. We all come from different backgrounds to become one team, curious about customs in other countries, to learn from a native with over 100 nationalities throughout our fleet. We are bound to make friends from at least several places we'd like to visit. So this is what they have in their website. Working on board, of course, a lot of young people dream about working at sea and especially on cruise ships, but few can imagine what cruise jobs are really like. The reality is that candidates for cruise ships employment have to realize that they are applying for a job, not a holiday. Unfortunately, and I have to say that in Cyprus, we don't really have, and this is what we're trying to do through CMMI or many other associations, CSC, DSM, what we try to do. We don't have too many people that young people that consider this as an option, whereas in other countries, this is like getting a job on board a cruise ship is like a major highlight in somebody's life. But in Cyprus, we're not there yet, and I think it is an option for some people that they may want to consider. Again, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. You love it or you hate it. There's no such thing that I will go to work from 8 hours and then go home and live my life. On board a ship, personal life and professional life is the same. So it is either you love it or you hate it. You cannot have it otherwise. Working on a cruise ship is an experience you never forget. Most jobs on cruise liners are very difficult and demanding. There is worldwide competition, but also many newbies. What I mean in this one is that the job that somebody from Cyprus can get could be a job that somebody from India or the United States or the UK has applied as well. So it's a worldwide competition, whereas the job in Cyprus may only be accessible or preferable for only people living in Cyprus. But also there are many new builds, at least before COVID, so there are more jobs being offered in this sector. So again, I mentioned them before, some positives: you travel to attractive destinations, you meet people from all over the world, you earn a lot of money comparing to onshore jobs, free accommodation and food and no utility bills, life experiences and personality integration. I cannot emphasize this personality integration enough. I think you acquire a lot of skills that you wouldn't acquire otherwise, and this is, in my opinion, extremely important. You gain work experience as well, and of course there are some negative ones like everything else in life. You work around 10 hours a day, no days off. The contract duration is about 6 months. Accommodation, because of space restrictions, is relatively small, and you even have you may even have to share a cabin. I also have to share in my old days when I was at your age. If you have a rough sea, you can get seasick. But as Mr. Shokuro said before, technology nowadays enables ships to work around the weather. So if there is bad weather, usually all these navigation systems enable us to take a different route. And of course, during COVID times, things have been extremely challenging. We had countries with different rules. We had constant changing of the rules, which didn't enable us to repatriate our seafarers as we would have liked. There were flight limitations, like there still are. There were flight cancellations in the last minute. We had quarantine, for example, a person that may go back to the Philippines may have to stay in quarantine for 14 days before they go back to their families. We unfortunately have to extend some contracts, which resulted in seafarers fatigue. There were some psychological issues, many days at sea, Like what I mentioned before, when I was on board from 2017 until 2017, the ship that I used to work on board, they spent 90 days at sea without any stop moving from Asia to the UK during COVID times. And you're, of course, away from your family and your loved ones. And financial stability is also a factor because a lot of families of seafarers depend on the income that the seafarers earn. And of course, like many other people that lost their lives during COVID, a lot of seafarers also passed away, unfortunately. So what do you need to work on board? Like everything else, I think you need the right mentality and the right approach. There are some training courses that you have before you join the ship, like the safety training, the security awareness, the crowd management, and also while on board, you may also have to do some on-the-job specific trainings. Medical examinations also have to take place before somebody can join the ship. Most of the travel expenses are paid by the company that asks you to join, that employs you. And usually people go through some money agencies. And of course, you have to be careful who you associate with. Like everything else, you have to be careful with nowadays, dealing through internet, like cybersecurity, giving codes and access and all these. And then also something that I would like to cover as well, that in addition to onboard employment, the sea experience can also entail shoreside employment. And I'm just going to give our example. We are a ship management company, so we are part of Island Oil. And what we do, like every other ship management company, we have technical management, we have marine safety and quality department, we have crew management, and we have a purchasing department, as well as other jobs like operations, chartering, and administration jobs. Pretty much all the ship management companies offer this kind of positions. Some positions like technical management and marine and safety quality require that people have this onboard experience and a marine academy background, whereas some other positions like crew management and purchasing, they just may require a degree in shipping, for example. It's one way to go for these jobs. So this is what I said before, or engineering. I'm gonna, we had not talked with Mr. Shokuros about this, but I have a similar information to what Mr. Shokuros said. This is how I started. I was 23 years old, about your age, and it was not in my plans to do this, but I ended up doing this. So as a bar waiter, this is what Mr. Shokuros said. In those days, in 1993, we had no communication with phone. We had these discs, and then eventually we went to more advanced discs, which we took to somebody who was sitting in an office, who was called a radio officer, and that's how we communicated with land, professionally and personally as well. So there was no internet, there were no mobile phones, there was no social media, no selfies, no ISN code, and no NFC code, which with a lot of stricter requirements than before. No trainings and no medical examinations were required in those days, and there was no safe money. Safe money means that at any given point of time, certain number of people from certain positions having certain emergency requirements must remain on board at all times. Not everybody can go ashore. No restrictions going ashore, but it was a lot of fun. So this is from Vietnam. This is Hong Kong. This is from Acapulco. Some people ask me if this was me. No, it wasn't me. I can barely swim, so I wouldn't do that. This is from Rio de Janeiro. This is from Beijing, from China. This is from the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. This is from Sydney. This is onboard activities that we used to have. This is from ashore. So that was my life in those days. Again, it doesn't mean that this is for everybody. but it is an option for some of you that may want to explore this option. And then 22 years later, I joined the ship again. So back to square one. This is not in an enclosed area. It's a free, open space because the company I used to work for was against visiting any animals in a captive environment. So this was just an open sea. This was in Aruba. This was in Norway. This was the Northern Lights in the Arctic. This is St. Petersburg. When you work on board, if you are in a cruise ship, you can also take your family on board. This is from Tallinn, Estonia. This is in Cambodia. Chicken doesn't look very appealing, but it's there. This is from Thailand, Koh Samui. This is from Kuala Lumpur. This is from Vietnam. This is from Malaysia. This is from Singapore. This is from Goa, India. This is from Dubai. This is from Jordan. So, are you in for a sea of experience? This is up to you to decide. I think it's an option. So, if I was going to become 23 years old again, I would have done it all over again. So, that's it from my side. I try to basically give you my point of view, my experience, because I felt that's the only way to explain how it is to work on ship and what is required to work on a ship. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Haralambous, for this interesting speech. I don't know if anyone wants to ask something about this.
May I ask Dimitris a question? Since he mentioned my name several times.
Yes, go ahead.
Dimitris, in my presentation, I referred in several cases to the skills that the people who come from a ship bring into the office. And I was wondering if you would like to expand further on this, and more specifically, the differences in attitudes, working attitudes of people who came from a ship to work shoreside. What kind of difference do you see?
Okay, I'm going to take my seafarer's hat off and I'm going to put my ship management hat on now to be able to answer your question. I mentioned your name several times because you've been a part of this journey on many different occasions from very different capacities. So I had to mention your name. What I would say before I answer your question is that you are at the age of 20 or something. What I would suggest is that my advice to you is that between the age of 20 to 25, 28 or something, I think you need to invest on yourself. You need to learn. You need to be in an environment where there are good teachers that can teach you. You need to work hard. You need to do everything that is needed in order for you to be able, at the age of 28, 29, 30, for example, to reap the benefits. What do I mean by that? It's a different thing when you ask for a job when you're 23, just finishing the university, versus asking for a job at 27, 28, having 4 or 5 years of solid work experience, where you learned a lot, both as a person and as a professional, and then you're gonna knock on a company's door and be more confident and feel that you can contribute. So I'm going back to Zacharias' question now. Yes, the people that work on board, I think they have a great advantage because when they go in a ship management company at the age of 27, 28, 29, 30 or whatever, I'm just using the names because it just happened that I worked in those during these years on ships. Going to a ship management company, you can say, listen, I have a degree, I have this experience on ships, I've been on these ships, I've been in this company, I learned all this, and now all the knowledge and all the expertise that I've gained throughout this process, both academically and work-wise, I can contribute. So you can hire me because I have a lot to offer and I have the right mentality and I know what it is to deal with ships, and I've been there, I've done that. So I'm more capable and I'm more confident and I'm more confident to lead the people on board and to contribute in the office. So yes, it's a great advantage to have work on board, and you can have higher expectations going to a company looking for a job. This is how I see this. It doesn't mean it's the only way. It doesn't mean it's the best way. This is how I see it from my standpoint.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Yorgo. I see that, I don't know whether Andri has raised her hand from CCCI, and before giving her the floor, I would also like to note that if we can have a comment on how perhaps the crew can build on some digital skills, it would be also nice to have your opinion on that, because I also see a question that I get on the chat that I guess that it was for Zacharias, but now you are on the floor, so if you can, share a couple of your thoughts on that. Thank you. And then Andri, the floor is yours.
About the digital competencies that people can build on. I'm not sure if I can answer this question in a constructive way, because again, I'm not sure I have that much expertise in that field. To be honest with you, Mr. Benticos.
Yeah, but from I think that since you are on the floor, you could say something from a practical point of view. In the sense, are the crew ready for building some digital skills? Would we need some re-education? Some practical stuff.
It's as Zacharias said at the beginning, we've gone through this process of joining online, and we still face some challenges. So there is always a struggle, and things are changing rapidly also in our industry. For example, now we have remote audits, we have remote inspections, we have remote collecting of data, like with the inventory of hazardous material. So yes, seafarers have to be much more advanced in terms of their digital knowledge, and there has been a digital transformation, and there will be, and this will continue. So it's very important that the people on board, as well as shoreside office, advance in how they communicate and how they solve issues as we move forward, because it's becoming a trend nowadays, and it's getting more and more, we're getting more and more dependent on that. So it is an absolute must that we continue to carry on with this digital transformation, as we will face it ahead of us as we move on.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nikos, may
yes.
since the question was originally for me, and
I think it was for you, Zacharia, well, but I just saw it in the chat. Sorry for that.
I was doing my presentation looking to do two different screens, and I missed the chat. So, I mean, one easy answer would be to say that the same way we do all this remotely, remote training would be an answer. The challenge that Dimitris knows as much as I do is that the crew on board the ships are so much overloaded these days, on all of the kind of ships for various reasons. Remotely training them while on board the ships may not be the most advisable approach. But on the other hand, we now have the chance of e-learning platforms. So the crew could be educated during their breaks, during their the time they are ashore on their holidays, on their in between their sea services. That would be maybe the best way to address this development of the crew, the upskilling and reskilling, because on board the ship, as we know, people work a lot and they are waiting for the few hours they have to rest to spend it in a different way. Of course, for those who have the stamina, they can always also join a platform from the ship and educate themselves. And this is also a matter of the companies to plan the schedule of their crew on board the ship so that they have this chance when the need is urgent and they have to do it before they go home.
And just to add on what Zacharias said, things have changed dramatically in terms of seamanship, because as I showed in my presentation, 30 years ago, there was almost no communication with the office. So people on board had to solve the problem themselves. They didn't have any major direction from the office. There was more seamanship. There was more experience, but they had to do everything themselves. There was less accountability in the office, less communication. Nowadays, there's so much communication with the office. So seafarers, even when they want to do a simple task, they still ask the office for permission, or approval. So things have changed dramatically. So we need to move along with the times and try to find a balance.
But I think, Dimitris, you will agree that the people who have served even for a few months on board the ship, when they come shoreside to work, they know how much they can achieve in a day's work. They have tested themselves in much more difficult situations. They have more stamina. They are more disciplined. They can live the hardships of a working environment much better, because definitely on board the ships you really test your limits.
Definitely, yeah. You also understand the psychology of a seafarer. So when you go to the office, you have a good understanding of what working every day, being away from your family, etc., feels like, and people that have worked on board can relate with that much easier, I would say, without stating that people that have not worked on board, they cannot be equally successful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dimitri. Thank you very much, Zacharias. I don't know. I saw Andri. Andri, you wanted to ask something, Dimitris, or?
No, it was just to mention that there is a question in the chat. I don't know if Ms. Economou has something else to add to her question.
I think,
yes,
yeah.
Hello. Hello, thank you for the replies. They were really interesting. I just wanted to clarify that the question was for the digital part, that you know, these employees, that they need to build these skills. Does this initiative come from their personal initiatives, or does it come from the companies as well? And I think it's kind of a combination. If I got this clear from Mr. Zacharias and Mr. Dimitris, I mean, it's kind of a combination, if I got this right. And I think it's clear.
Okay. Thank you. Thank
Thanks
you very much,
Yana.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether Dimitris or Zacharias wants to add something. Otherwise, I think both replies, they were very clear and to the point, and we would like to thank you both. And Yorgo, I guess that we can move on to the next round. So yes, please invite to the floor the next speaker. Thank you.
Now we're moving into the next part of our session, which is new and emerging technologies in maritime industry. And for this session, the first speaker is Dr. Ioannis Kyriakidis, senior scientist in CMMI, with his presentations in making sense of marine and maritime processes through emerging technologies. Thank you, Ioannis, for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much. I hope that you will not be talking about data fusion, because this is something that I do not understand so well. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I actually removed those slides intentionally. So yes, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It was an amazing discussion also, and interesting questions that I will briefly touch upon later. But first, I'm going to be very brief because I want to show you a small advertisement, basically, of what we do in our research, so that to get people excited and get them to join us in this effort, because we need more people and more digital skills to develop. So it's making sense out of all these new things that are coming and these new challenges that we are facing. We're facing a lot of new challenges, new disasters. It's about saving lives, making lives better and securing our societies. But also we have to operate in extremely complex environments that are both physical and also cyber. This is a new dimension that entered our lives. And this is both in land, air, and sea. And to do this, we need our smart devices. We need our algorithms, and we need to increase our digital skills in order to create new systems that are able to tackle these challenges. And here you see some mentions of, course, data fusion that we mentioned before, but also these intelligence systems that need to be programmed and collaborate together to provide a response to these challenges. So what we are doing through our research programs is developing algorithms that are able to track targets, to identify human behavior, or to understand what is happening. This is an example from land, of course. And I'm just showing some videos to show what our algorithms are doing. And one program that is now running is called Maritime Cognitive Decision Support System, which has a goal of providing this understanding that we have talked about, making sense specifically in the maritime environment, and to apply this technological development to maritime and coastal tourism activities planning, emergency response and planning, and both tourism but also maritime spatial planning in terms of identifying, for example, areas where aquaculture can be placed. We put first the environment. It's all about creating sustainable solutions and understanding what is happening, what is our impact to the natural environment, and then having clean waters and safe so that our tourism can develop. Transportation and shipping, which key element here is digitalization, decarbonization, but also safety. And we do need our intelligence systems to provide us with the information to do this. Secure societies by protecting our critical infrastructure and saving people at sea. Planning our aquacultural zones so that we have food for the future and have new industries developing that are acceptable to all, but also renewable energy. So as I have mentioned, it's a very large maritime environment, very complex, and we have low energy capability, availability in that environment, and lack of connectivity at present that we need to increase. We have all these intelligent assets, drones, underwater vehicles, and all that that can help us, but we cannot have them everywhere. We cannot collect data everywhere. So we need to have algorithms that help those intelligent agents collaborate and collect data where they need to be collected and not just everywhere. And that is why we proposed this program to develop a cognitive decision support system. Cognitive in the sense that we are smart about where we collect the data and how do we allocate our resources in terms of robotics, intelligent assets, and all that. So we're creating algorithms, a suite of software, maricodes. Also, we're developing a maritime laboratory that is expanding with new assets, buoys, smart floats, and all that. And we are forming, the most important thing that we are forming here, because this is a 3-year project, we're going to do a lot of things with our partners, but we need to form more partnerships, strategic partnerships with government, academic and research, industry, and representatives of the public. And very importantly here with the CMMI, we are a research organization that can take this project further into the future. We're creating a strategic partnership and also with the industry, for example, Petronav, extending our maritime laboratory to their premises, to their ships, to create the digital ship, putting sensors, IoTs in their ship, and establishing connectivity. We have also the Innovation Hub, that is a concept that allows us to help new companies, startups, or people with ideas in general, to help them advance their ideas and connect them to the industry, and eventually accelerate the product, the entry of the product and services to the market that are related to maritime activities planning, emergency response planning, and maritime spatial planning. Cognitive fusion is one algorithm that we are creating that allows the collaboration of heterogeneous systems. For example, cameras, hydrophones, robotic systems, underwater gliders, drones, and all that. You have all these very different sensing assets. So how do you make them collaborate together? One human can plan the path of one underwater glider, but cannot understand how to make 100 assets to collaborate together and cover, for example, a certain maritime environment without running out of battery, without running out of connectivity, and in general working under constrained resources to cover a very complex and large environment. And eventually this complexity can be solved by an algorithm, but the human is also present and very relevant, because all these experts, a person who develops the digital skills cannot know everything, cannot know the life of the crew member, cannot know the shipping industry and the aquaculture industry and all these industries that need digitalization. So we need the synergy between the person and the intelligence system. So this is an example of where a human expert can select the best route for path planning that an algorithm develops. So the algorithm will develop some optimal solutions, but some may not be relevant to the needs of the person. So there's a synergy here where the human can select eventually and make the final choice of what the intelligent assets will do. We have in this program many academic research institutions, many enterprises, and one question was on developing digital skills. It's a very good question, because when you're starting from, and it's very important to be proactive in talking to us, to find us and talk to us to get academic knowledge, but also to connect you to the industry to get this industrial experience, all these industries that are working with digital skills that can provide mentorship, but also the companies that need digital skills that can tell us the needs that exist. So it's very important to proactively go and talk to people and get some mentorship on how to develop your digital skills. Representatives of the industry and public, and also the government, the Ministry of Defense is with us in this program. So I will be very brief, just briefly going through the suite of software without getting into details, and those who are very interested can talk to us. Cognitive fusion, cognitive optimization, so optimizing the resources in a maritime environment, for example, identifying these sites where you can place open sea aquaculture without affecting shipping routes, existing fisheries, activities, and tourist areas. We have swarm intelligence. So now that we're having many assets, many drones flying, how do you make them collaborate and help them make smart and quick decisions? Data-driven modeling, making use of all that data that we're getting from the maritime environment, so that we understand better what is happening and be able to help the environment and also develop industries in a sustainable manner. And also the very important visualization. So it has been mentioned before about crew members that may not be technologically advanced. Not everyone will develop digital skills. So it is very important for us when we develop these applications to make them as simple as possible, as responsive as possible, so that people will be able to use them, these advanced algorithms, and it would be as easy as using their cell phone. Everyone can use a cell phone. There's amazing technology behind it, but nobody knows, not many people know how to create them and program them. So it's important to have the user in mind. So the visualization pipeline that we're creating takes care of that. And of course, interoperability of all these systems, different standards that exist in the maritime industry, All these systems have to collaborate together, and we need to have also algorithms that translate the language of one intelligent system to the language of another, for example, to help them collaborate and make the best of what we can achieve. Also, GIS, Geographical Information Systems, are very important here, representing all the information on the map and helping the human optimize activities. And of course, we are creating with our partners, both internal and external, the Maritime Laboratory. And the idea here is to provide these systems for people to use them for developing their own prototypes, help them during mentoring, but also developing maybe educational programs, showing a practical example of an intelligent system and explaining to people how to create one, developing these digital skills. The strategic partnership that I have mentioned before is essential for the continuation of this program. And I have mentioned also already the Innovation Hub. So anyone interested in either in an internship or training or creating a startup, please let us know. Our goal is to both sustain the environment, but also create profitable new ventures. And we're planning to have experiments and validation scenarios. Some technologies are being developed and experiences are happening already. This is a smart float allowing us to just place sensors and have it, this vehicle collect data from the maritime environment. And here with the CMMI, to have our first, with the robotics center, our first intelligent vehicle, fast moving vehicle that I will show a video of later. Another intelligent algorithm here, tracking activity at sea. So this is an example of target tracking, but in this case, target is to understand, the target is to understand what is happening in an area where there are tourists, there is sports activities, so that we safeguard people's lives on one hand, also make sure that these activities coexist, but also we can optimize activities, the performance of athletes, for example, through collecting data. So these are only some examples of what we can achieve. This is an example of securing a protected area. It can be a maritime protected area using an array of hydrophones, that is underwater microphones, understanding what is happening and listening to sounds and classifying them. For example, if a jet ski is passing or a boat or something else. And when there is enough reason to worry about something, then a drone can take off either autonomously or by the command of a person to collect more information or even to save a person's life. This is the video of our smart boat at the CMMI. And there's a lot of papers that you can read. You can keep these slides as reference for those who are interested. We have another program running, OpenSea Aquaculture. The goal here is to create a plan for the development of a new industry. We do have aquaculture, but OpenSea Aquaculture is very new. It's something different because it requires digitalization. We have a very large area at sea that we can utilize. There is a lot of need for aquaculture, and Cyprus is especially a good location due to the warm waters that enable the faster growth of fish. Now, what are the issues? What are the challenges here? Is that we can place aquaculture, but then we have to mind the conflict between with other activities. Fisheries activities, you cannot place aquaculture in a shipping route. You cannot place aquaculture in a shooting range or an area where tourists also swim. So how do we design our new industry in order to coexist with other industries, but also as we move away from the shore, imagine that there is no line of sight anymore, and it takes a long time to go there with a ship and see what's going on. So we need to have our sensors there, our IoTs and intelligent algorithms analyzing the environment to protect both the cage, the contents, the fish, but also protect the natural environment that is around the fish, understanding if the aquaculture is producing pollutants that are harmful to the environment and take measures. Also, for any reason, criminal activity or protect the environment. So this program is putting together all these fragmented capabilities that we have in order to model the maritime environment, to do the maritime spatial planning to understand where to put these aquaculture facilities, to design an aquaculture facility and to identify existing ones that are suitable to our region, and of course develop ongoing monitoring for the catch and the environment, and also develop the financial and legal framework. Because if we create this amazing technology, then we need someone to pay for it, to create it, and to create new jobs. So we need to convince also the investors that we're doing a good job and this is going to work. These are the partners of this consortium, and we have, again, the external advisory board that is filled with members that, such as you have seen today, people with expertise in the industry that are advising us on how to best proceed with our plans. And let me show you just the map that we have put together so far. You see how much activity is happening in Cyprus in the coastal areas. And it is very difficult to find places to put aquaculture. We've been working on it for a year or more now. And we have found some areas, but still we're working on that. And more further than that, we are designing a new aquacultural station, a cage with mooring that in our design looks like a ship, a catamaran type of ship that is something different that was envisioned before. There are some bigger ones, but we are creating one that is small enough for the size of Cyprus so that it would be feasible and profitable. So this was OS Aqua, open sea aquaculture in the Eastern Mediterranean. And at the CMMI, we have many centers. We have the robotic centers, other centers that we will see later, MOSTEC. We also have something that is relevant to the digital skills that was mentioned before, the digitalization center, with the goal to optimize operations through the use of digital technologies. So by getting enough data, understanding the data, and provide feedback to the decision makers and the seafarers to optimize operations so that we drive down the use of resources that are harmful to the environment. We have many research areas. I don't have to go through them in detail or in depth, but the people who are interested in getting into these areas, please contact us to have a separate conversation, but also please feel free to ask questions after this presentation. We have many application areas that relate to the shipping industry, open sea aquaculture, security, and in general, digital transformation, but we're very interested in education and training. So we would like to develop digital skills for people. So please, again, contact us on that. We have some projects that we're running, and I will keep it up to this point and leave the rest to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Annis, for this interesting speech. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yanni, these were very interesting stuff that you presented. Very, very interesting. I guess that many of them, as you have mentioned, they will be very useful at, for autonomous shipping and this kind of operation of shipboard operation. I also saw this little vessel, this Kerkuros. I don't remember. yeah.
Kerkuros is the name.
Kerkuros, yeah, super. Can you a little bit elaborate on this, autonomy? I mean, up to what stage you think it will be feasible or acceptable or whatever? I understand that with driving, it might be easier. With shipping, will we go soon or at some point to full autonomy? What are your views on that?
Yeah, this is tricky for me to answer because this is recorded. So people are going to look at this after 10, 20 years and say, okay, this guy was wrong. It's very hard to predict.
That's why I'm asking. That's why we are recording it. Okay. Yeah.
I grew up at a time where we didn't have cell phones. We were dreaming of different things. It wasn't exactly this, people who had the imagination, but I don't think we would be able to predict these problems that we have now. And the thing is that it's unpredictable, and because we have new challenges that we cannot predict, and also and challenges drive people's imagination and creativity. We also have this acceleration. So it's very hard for our minds now to understand what's going to happen in 5 years. We might see things in 5 years and we say, I didn't think it would happen. Because an intelligent algorithm that is able to beat the best chess masters and best Go masters in the world to the point that they are quitting their careers because of that, because they're so surprised. We don't know when these autonomous vehicles were going to come and be operational. So there's different degrees of autonomies to make an introduction for those who don't know. So autonomy 1 is when you are driving yourself, but autonomy 5 is fully operational. In between, there are different degrees. So we're now at the point where we have these IoT systems collecting information, processing them on the edge, as we say, processing on board of the vehicle, on board of the intelligence chip, and making their conclusions, and then provide feedback to the human user to make the decisions. Still, the human is very much involved in these decisions, but there are things like these new swarms that we see from the military and some demonstrations. We don't know exactly the military what technology has right now, but now appearing in civil operations. They are able to go on their own and find a target, and by target we mean a person drowning at sea, to help the person, not to attack. Things are happening now, and we don't know how fast they're going to move. But we're at the point where we do have a lot of intelligent systems making their own decisions, learning from the environment through reinforcement learning. This is something that a keyword that people need to check for digital skills. Reinforcement learning is a method that allows machines to learn, and we don't know the limit yet of this learning. Whatever you give them, eventually they learn it one way or another, and very fast, not faster than a human. So I believe that we will have autonomous, light autonomous vehicles very soon that are to the level 5 with satisfactory performance without humans on board. But for the larger vessels, I have to stop myself here and talk more to the industry person who know the difficulties. It's very hard to trust an autonomous ship on their own with crew members on board or with passengers, cruise lines on board. But a lot already is happening even in our own cars, and we don't know it's happening. A lot of intelligence already exists while we're driving.
Yeah, indeed. We need the manuals are getting thicker and thicker in cars. Indeed. Thank you very much. I do not see another question. Oh, no, I have Yana Economou. She raised her hand. Is this correct?
Yes, it's me again.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question to Yannis. Is it only persons that can approach this digitalization center, or can companies refer to you for learning points?
Yes, definitely. We are very interested in collaborating with the industry and transferring our skills to the industry, because we come from, some of us from an academic background and now a research background. But the point of the CMI is to connect with industry and transfer the skills. We have all these algorithms, all this knowledge, but it's only the industry that can implement them, because we cannot do everything. So please approach us, talk to us, and we will give you this knowledge to create new products, new services, and all that.
Okay, thank you, Yanni. And this is, it's implied that it comes with a fee, right? It's a service you provide.
Yeah, this is interesting because we're a very new organization. Definitely, when you give your time, definitely, and your knowledge, your intellectual property, it has to be a win-win situation. So it could be even a joint product. It could be a joint spin-off. These are very new for us. We're not going to just send you an email and never see you again and say, okay, contact us if something is not working. We're not a company like that. We're a registered organization, and we're a center of excellence that connects people and is interested to doing further work. So we can talk about it with.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Yannis. I think you made us a little bit wiser. Thank you very much. Yorgo, the floor is back to you for the last speaker.
Thank you. And now moving to Mr. George Maloupas, Associate Scientist of CMMI, with his presentation in emerging technologies in green transformation of the maritime industry.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, we can see your screen.
First of all, thank you for the invitation and giving me the chance to present the interesting topic of green transformation. And I find that green transformation is always interlinked with digitalization. So if you have the digital twin, you also need somehow to evaluate your green transformation technologies. So these two things go hand in hand. So I think this presentation blends in well with what Ioannis said before and what Zaharia has also mentioned in the introductory presentation. I think before we start discussing the green transformation and green emerging technologies, is also give a background on why do we need this green transformation. Basically, it's climate change is here. We need to limit our impact as humans or as our societies and economies. We need to somehow decarbonize and minimize our CO2 emissions. And you may know or you may not know that the shipping industry is regulated by the International Maritime Organization, and which has set various targets, and these are shown here in this short diagram. For example, in 2018, the IMO has defined its initial strategy to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. Greenhouse gas, I mean, I'm mostly referring to CO2, but there are also other greenhouse gases out there, for example, methane. So we need to limit our emissions by 50% in 2050 compared to the 2008 baseline. At the end result is basically full decarbonization by 2100. So that means we need to act quickly. If you consider the lifetime of a ship, and if you also think about the intermediate measures, like for example, 2030, the lifetime of a ship might be 20, 30, 40 years from now. So if we want to include these decarbonization technologies or digital technologies, we need to start building these ships now. I think we're already too late for the 2030, right? So it's an incentive for the new generation in the audience to think about outside the box, and we need those measures that we need to decarbonize. We need them implemented and tested now so that we can hopefully achieve those targets by 2050 and hopefully by 2100. There's also the measures, for example, that IMO has set, the EEDI, EEXI, and the Carbon Intensity Indicator, or CII. And these were recent measures, but a key challenge is basically for a seafarer or an engineer or someone who's interested in these new green technologies that we want to limit our impact on the planet, is to firstly understand these regulations, and also how to implement these regulations in terms of technology. There's also other, for example, the EU Green Deal, which has recently released the Fit for 55 package, and I will talk about that in a minute. And also some change in the policy shift by the USA, and also COP26 that was will be delivered in a couple of weeks. Note that the COP26 is mostly to add political pressure rather than regulate the shipping industry, but all this EU Green Deal via its taxation and economic activities and sustainability incentives and zero pollution action for plan for water and air and soil measures to reduce our impact, not only the CO2 emissions, but also the harmful emissions like NOx, SOx. This will eventually limit the number of deaths, for example, of emissions in our society. So, leading what Yanis talked about later, we also need green technologies, but we also need tools that will help us estimate and/or calculate the continuous monitoring of these CO2 emissions. And this monitoring will help organizations such as the IMO and the regulatory bodies and governments, but also shipping companies to review and set their decarbonization studies. Having something in place, but without having the ability to monitor or calculate those effects, regulation, in my opinion, is meaningless. We need tools to estimate these emissions. I think it's good to also understand the maritime industry and compare it with its emissions with other industries, such as the aviation industry or other industries shown in that bubble diagram over there. Maritime transport is by far the most efficient mode of transportation in terms of energy per distance travel or energy per ton kilometer. Roughly 3% of the final energy demand goes to shipping. And if you think about it in terms of CO2 emissions, shipping industry is like the 6th biggest country in the world in CO2 emissions. So we need to regulate the maritime industry and by having different options such as alternative fuels and electrification, improving the efficiencies of existing technologies, and also having other options such as hull coatings and other methods that will help us decarbonize. What's more important to note that the maritime industry has a very high share of fossil fuel share towards 2050, and the transition towards that it's a bit slow compared to other industries. That's how we need to act now, so that we may have a chance to achieve those 2050 targets. We may be a bit late, in my personal opinion, to achieve those 2030 and 2025 targets, but we may have a chance to achieve these targets by 2050 if we act now. And this slide basically blends in what I've tried to set the scene earlier on. We need digitalization. We also need innovative ship design and improve our engines' efficiencies. And the latter two are basically the green technologies, but they all marry together with digitalization. They all are together in our fight against climate change and our decarbonization goals. For example, logistics and efficiency and supply chain improvements are needed, and that will come from digitalization, sensors, smart algorithms, the ones that Yanis mentioned earlier, but also in terms of real hard engineering, like improve hull performance, reduce drag resistance, improve energy efficiency, and also have measures like the operation and technical measures that will basically reduce our fuel consumption. And these figures here that I show were obtained from DNV, recently published the maritime forecast by 2050. If you're not aware of this, these are interesting report for you to download. And it kind of explains where we are now and what we need to do. And the first thing is logistics and digitalization, hydrodynamics, like for example, hull coating and air lubrication, I will talk about in a minute. Machinery such as waste heat recovery, and how do we improve our existing technologies and improve our energy efficiency, batteries, or a hybrid form of batteries and other technologies. And in my opinion, the most important is fuels. I think fuels will be the biggest way of decarbonizing at least the shipping industry. And we have some intermediate fuels like LNG and LPG. We have biofuels, we have electrification, we have hydrogen and ammonia, but the latter two, ammonia and hydrogen, if they're green fuels, like they're produced from renewable energy, then they will achieve complete decarbonization. But having a blend or a strategy for alternative fuels, that will be the key for our decarbonization. And also some kind of other ways of storing CO2 emissions. But I remember everyone talking about this technology when I was a student, and still this carbon capture and storage technologies has not taken off yet. So I'm not very optimistic in terms of this technology. So at least here, the most important factors for emerging technologies to achieve green transformation. One is our fuel mix, or the use of alternative fuels. The problem is that if you read different reports, you will see a plethora of outlooks for 2050, but the common theme is that new fuels and innovative fuels like ammonia and hydrogen are in the map for 2050, irrespective of the outlook. And here, the pink here, low carbon means a mixture of ammonia and biofuels, hydrogen and synthetic fuels. The fuel mix is almost entirely oil dominated today. As I said earlier, the shipping industry has not yet managed to decarbonize to a large extent compared to other industries. But if we develop technologies to develop these alternative fuels such as ammonia and hydrogen, not only in terms of how to generate these technologies, but also do them in a cost-effective way, and also the supply chain. For example, for Cyprus, we don't have an industry for ammonia. So what do we do in that sense? If ammonia is predicted to be one of the key alternative fuels, for example, here it's by 2050 is predicted to be around 25%. So a key challenge here is to invest in the right technology, and that will come basically from the skill set that the new generation will have in be able to assess and predict the current technologies, not only in technologies, but also in the cost and life cycle approaches. Another key factor is renewable energy sources. It's wind and biofuels and solar. Here I list wind. There are different types of sails that you can use: soft sails, fixed sails, flattened rotors, where you use the Magnus effect to have a propulsion, and also kite sails. These are, you may not think of this as new. If you think about sails were used in the ancient years by the ancient Greeks, and probably even earlier. But how to use this on commercial ships, new designs, and how the load and their attachment on the ships is affected is a major challenge. Another use for wind power is, of course, for onshore and either onshore or offshore, but to basically electrolyze water or split water into its basic constituents, hydrogen and oxygen, and effectively generate hydrogen, but green hydrogen. Green hydrogen means basically it's a renewable hydrogen produced in a renewable sense. So basically, when you produce hydrogen, you don't emit CO2, and that's a key challenge. Another challenge in terms of electrolyzing water is cost. and also its transportation, how you transport hydrogen. Hydrogen is a dangerous and explosive gas, and you also have to think about safety issues and other drawbacks. Also, if you think about wind, another major drawback of wind is its intermittency and also the difficulty in maximizing the full power potential while sailing into the wind. So these are key challenges for this type of technology to be applied for commercial ships. Another approach is basically solar. PV, you have PV cells as similar cells as you have installed on the roofs of your home. So you have PV cells that utilize this solar energy to charge lead acid batteries, for example, for either your auxiliary or power demands. But this may be limited to short routes for small vessels, because if you think about the lifetime of the energy density of a battery, because you charge a battery, the energy density of a battery compared to the fossil fuel is minuscule compared to fossil fuel. So if you translate that in terms of weight, then the weight restriction will be overwhelming for your vessel design, and also your space available on board a vessel. So you can't just load the container ship with batteries, so you only have transport only one container. That would make no much financial sense. And also another technology will be the combination of fixed sails with PV cells. So basically you have a fixed sail and you attach PV cells. But all these technologies, the key challenge is basically their storage, to avoid what I've mentioned earlier, their intermittency issues. So basically improving batteries. Other technologies in our green transformation are basically for power generation and the ship's auxiliary uses. One way is fuel cells. So instead of burning a fuel which means you emit CO2 emissions, you have green fuels, and you basically generate electricity rather than just burn alternative fuels or fossil fuels. So you produce electricity to meet your power demands, but lately fuel cells have mostly been using for auxiliary uses. But recent trends, if you read the latest literature, you'll see that there's growing trends in the usage of propulsion, and also the type of fuel. For example, green hydrogen and also green ammonia, which is now the new alternative fuel that's been discussed. Which will prevail, I'm not sure. Another one is electric/hybrid propulsion, where you basically have batteries, as I also already mentioned, flywheels and/or supercapacitors. But these are not new concepts, but how do you install them on ships, and how do you overcome their limitations is the key for addressing these challenges. Another major challenge is, as I said, the battery energy density compared to the fossil fuels. Hybrid marine engines are very attractive because they can be fueled by diesel or LNG or hydrogen, and you can use either fuel cells or batteries or an electric motor. So you have this kind of hybridization that you can have fuel savings, because the other half of the hybrid would come from renewable energy, and you have fuel savings, and then the problem is low payback times. You might find it strange that nuclear is on the list, because nuclear has been there for a long time, and for ships at least it has been used for military applications, but it's attractive because of its high power density, low and stable prices, low greenhouse gas emissions. But if you consider the whole life cycle of nuclear, you also emit some CO2 emissions, but you don't burn fossil fuels, so there's relatively zero emissions, and also zero harmful emissions, and long operation periods without the need of refueling, which is key for commercial ships. However, for nuclear to take off and be applied for commercial ships is, in my opinion, rather unlikely, because first you need to think about the kind of political issues that come to it. Which country is willing to accept a nuclear power vessel in the port if they come from a non-friendly country? Also, safety issues. What happens? You think about the Chernobyl, the accident, and the latest one, the Fukushima accident, and also terrorism, cybersecurity, etc. And cybersecurity actually blends in with the digitalization that Yanis was mentioning earlier. So there are many. It's a multifaceted problem that needs to be addressed. Also, vessel design and ways to reduce your resistance. For example, reduction of hull resistance. You see here some pictures of aquatic life developing on marine vessels. The problem is that you can't just paint the whole thing and not consider the environmental implications and the implications that it will have on aquatic life. So you have to, on one hand, minimize the drag resistance by these hull coatings, but on the other hand, you have to satisfy the environmental regulations imposed by the IMO. So it's not a very it's a very difficult question to answer. Another issue is, or an emerging technology is air lubrication. And you can see here a picture. What it means is basically you have lots of, you have a pump here and some pipe work, which blows your air underneath the hull. And this basically forms an air lubrication, which effectively reduces the drag resistance, hence reduces the fuel consumption. This is kind of an innovative design and which needs skills both in the naval architecture, but also in terms of engineering. How do you design the pump? How do you design the pump work? How often do you place this hose there to inject or to introduce air underneath the hull? So it's kind of a design and optimization process. So effectively, and if you read the literature, this is kind of where the digital twin comes in and blends in with the green technologies. Another emerging technology is innovative waste heat recovery systems. For example, organic Rankine cycles, where instead of rejecting your heat to the environment, you use some of that heat from the exhaust gases and then use it to use the waste heat for other applications, such as in a waste heat recovery cycle. So these are very innovative, and the list is not exhaustive. But what I wanted to show also is how CMMI is trying to achieve this green and digital transformation. The digital transformation Yanis talked about, but I'll focus on the blending of this. So we have the different centers that CMMI, when CMMI was created. One of them is the Marine and Offshore Science and Technology Engineering Center, or MOSTEC. This is the center that I am currently researching at. The MOSTEC's areas are a large area of interest, but and they're included in, and these areas are climate change, decarbonization, offshore engineering, vessel performance, optimization, autonomous vessel operation, maritime electrification, and offshore renewable energy, but also helping companies achieve their imposed designs and offer services in that sense to help companies to achieve their business strategies. So in that respect, the Cyprus Decarbonization Hub was established. Basically, CMMI is monitoring global challenges concerning the green and digital transition, and it participates in the formulation of different policies, the European level and national level, and it's in line with the policies and priorities as set by the IMO. And its activities are basically research in the decarbonization, the key aspects that I discussed earlier, but also on offshore renewable energy sources, with particular emphasis on the energy balance of Cyprus, and also the effects of climate change and the coastal protection of Cyprus. And I should note that the Cyprus Decarbonization Hub is led by MOSTE, but also supported by the other centers that I've listed in the previous slide. To help you understand what MOSTE is doing, what CMMI is doing, and also what the Cyprus Decarbonization Hub is doing, I'll just showcase some of our projects, our active up and running projects. One of them is the development of an autonomous zero-emission sea transporter, and you can see a schematic of how we envision this vessel to be, basically a catamaran that is electric. And we are basically now at the stages of designing, and we are in talks with local shipyards on one hand, and also with advanced partners such as the University of Southampton, specifically the Southampton Marine and Maritime Institute. And we are currently designing this catamaran, and we hope to have something traveling the coast of Mackenzie, in the Mackenzie Beach, up until the Pervoya Lighthouse. And the objective of this project is basically to help electrify the current, or prove as a concept that it's possible to have electric vessels, and also to retrofit the existing fleet by electrifying it. And we are currently looking at different technologies. One is batteries, the other one is biogas with our partners. And the aim is to promote this transition, at least for the coastal vessel fleet, to aid the transition to fully decarbonization. Other initiatives is the development of tools that will help countries or regulatory bodies to assess whether these tools, whether these regulations are in line, and if they're effective with what has been said and what's been done in practice. One is the development of a tool or a platform that will assess the environmental impact due to trade and transport. And if you think Cyprus as a case study, we ship lots of goods and materials from all parts of the world. Because Cyprus is an island by nature, we heavily depend on shipping. So most goods arrive in Cyprus from shipping, but we don't have a way to assess these CO2 emissions or hazardous emissions like SOx, NOx, CO, particulate matter, and unburned hydrocarbons. And these are generated by transportation. And when I'm talking about transportation, I also refer to the intermodal transportation, other forms of transportation such as air, shipping, rail, and their combination. So the platform will consider major factors and parameters in the material transportation history, and it will also consider at first stage the unique island characteristics of Cyprus and its heavy dependence on the shipping sector. So it will help and estimate the environmental impact by affecting the business strategy and government policies. And this is also in line with the Fit for 55 package that was released on the 14th of July with the carbon border adjustment mechanism that will basically put a carbon price on imports of some form of products and this will include shipping in the European Trading Scheme Directive. So we'll basically, if you're importing goods or materials, it will avoid this carbon leakage. So, and this will ensure that European emissions reductions are true and effective in terms of the global emissions decline, instead of blaming your neighbors. It's not me, it's you that you're doing the polluting. Another and a similar tool is the creation of, if you like, an observatory that will monitor the waterborne air pollution due to shipping in the Eastern Mediterranean. You can see that here in 2015, the major shipping routes, and you can see that the lines indicate CO2 emissions by shipping, and the relative thickness is the thicker the line, the more CO2 emissions. You can see that the most important route through the canal, the Suez Canal, basically near Cyprus and in the Eastern Mediterranean. It's the most important shipping route, and this will increase. So if you look at the projection for 2035, the CO2 emissions will increase. So the thickness of this line has increased here. So the impact of emissions will increase, and is projected to increase because the needs of the population of the global population will grow, the economies will grow, hopefully. So emissions will grow. What this tool envisions to do is to have real-time monitoring of commercial ships in this area, in the Eastern Mediterranean, but also include the Suez Canal. And it will also include local sea routes. And the objective is to calculate gas emissions using the AIS system. So basically radars that track ships, and from the identity of the ships will know vessel speed, sea state, the energy efficiency, what type of engine it uses. So basically we will know for sure how much emissions we will get, and also how much harmful emissions you are emitting. The innovative bit here is that currently the monitoring of these emissions is done by satellites only. So having more accurate tools like the AIS system will help governments, even local government, even in the region of the Eastern Mediterranean, if it's to be a SECA or an ECA emission control area or sulfur emission control area, it will help us understand and quantify the emissions from shipping. The other objective of this tool is to create like a special monitoring zone around Cyprus, and that would monitor the pollution of ships around Cyprus. And that will also include ships on port. So let's say the Limassol port, and instead of having the engines of the ship up and running and creating local emissions and CO2 emissions as well, we can have the term known as cold ironing, where you basically plug in and provide electricity from the national grid instead of having the engines of the ship running. The other initiatives that the Cyprus Decarbonization Hub is currently active is in the theoretical and experimental investigation of alternative fuels such as hydrogen and biogas with our partners. And these are basically as drop-in fuels for marine diesel engines. The problem is, at least for Cyprus, is also you need to solve the issues of the supply chain, not only make it work and combust correctly in a diesel engine, but also ensure the supply chain is sufficient and there are no intermittent fuel supplies. And you can see that from the DNV report here, from the Maritime Forecast 2050, that the uptake of alternative fuels for the world fleet as of June 2021 is pretty low, but it's growing, and the new ships on order. There was one recent order from Maersk that placed an order for methanol. And you can see that the industry is reacting to these changes, and the industry is keen on using these alternative fuels as the way of decarbonizing the shipping industry. So the world economy will continue to use fossil fuels and will be reliant on fossil fuels for many years, unfortunately. But it's important to reduce these consequences. There's no single solution that fits all, but we need to be proactive, and this is where we need new people with new skills that will fill the gap to provide solutions that will help the shipping industry to decarbonize. There are a vast variety of solutions, which I already mentioned. Alternative fuels, in my opinion, the most important, but also renewable sources of energy, which are non-polluting, and other anti-pollution technologies, for example, scrubbers and all that, safety regulations, and functional framework, which is not covered by existing protocols. For example, there are no regulations for using ammonia as a fuel, so the current regulations will probably need to be revised by the IMO and also implemented. So the IMO targets will be achieved is basically with these four key points: radical technologies, social pressure as always, financial incentives by local and national governments, and finally, and probably most important, is regulation and legislation reforms at all levels, because this will be the driver for pushing research and development, and also companies to push for green technologies. And this will be achieved by filling the skills gap in developing existing technologies, and also the development of the necessary tools, such tools that I already described by what the Cyprus Decarbonization Hub is envisioning and is what it's trying to do. And lastly, what needs to change in terms of the transformation of shipping companies to address the digitalization and green challenges? Here, I've put some quotations from different people, and the key thing is that digital and green transformation is the next step with all those technologies that are already described. So changes will come here in-house research and development, not only from engine manufacturers, for example, but also from ship owners, ship managers. How do we track ships? How do we change the operation, and how do we reduce fuel efficiencies? How do we improve fuel efficiencies by having different measures of managing our systems? IT development, big data structures and analytics, lots of artificial intelligence. In the technical department, how do officers and performance engineers change? In the chartering department, artificial neural networks, drones, drone management, big data, but also safety and quality, supply and purchasing, legal and compliance. And you also see that, and I will close with this following questions, you'll see that the new demand is also having specialized skills, for example, alternative fuels, but also a broader understanding of the needs and what needs to change, and having in mind the big picture. So my open-ended question to the young generation in the audience is, what skills do you want to have? Do you want to be a generalist? Do you want to be a niche person understanding how to implement one particular technology and improving it to perfection? Or do you want to be a generalist? And this will help you decide on what career path you want to follow. With that, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Yorgo. Indeed, this was a very, how can I put, a very complete presentation in the sense that you covered so many issues and you gave a very, very nice representation of what's going on nowadays in terms of quality, of efficiency, of safety in shipping. And you covered a lot of ground, and you gave a lot of material and food for thought in all of our audience. I guess, to tell you the absolute truth, I guess that there could be a lot of questions, because you covered you gave a very good picture, detailed picture of many items. I just, before closing, because we have in 20 minutes, we have the next session, and we have to proceed, Yorgo. Let me just ask you about the nuclear reference that you made. Do you see any, okay, nuclear energy is being used a lot, as we know, in military vessels. There used to be, especially in the Far East, some, some applications of nuclear conventional ships, because I keep on hearing about nuclear as green energy and very efficient energy and all that stuff. Do you see any, practical potential of having nuclear energy on board commercial vessels, or due to security issues and the rest of the issues that you mentioned, you exclude, you do not think that this is probable? And I mean in the near future. I don't mean in 20 years or 30 years. I mean, because we do have, the technical expertise for that. That's why I'm asking. Thank you.
It depends on your religion. I think what will determine the uptake of nuclear, at least for commercial shipping, is the public perception, and I think that's a key driver of acceptance. If people found out that most of the ships coming, for example, in Limassol port are nuclear, they will all be worried. So. And unfortunately, we live in the era of fake news, and that probably determines lots of things nowadays, sadly. So you have to be careful what you read and what you understand, and double check what you read. So I think public perception for commercial shipping will be the key driver here. I think we've seen Germany has decommissioning their nuclear power plants. So I think it's not a feasible option, but this is where the digitalization part will come in, and the artificial intelligence. The problem is, if you have a nuclear accident, is the human factor. If you manage to eliminate the human factor, then probably will be it will open new grounds for nuclear. So by making nuclear safer, probably it will be a viable option, but I think public perception will dominate in this sense, which will be a negative one.
Thank you. I think that I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, public perception will be the driver here, because nobody, I guess, as you said, would like to have, a nuclear, nuclear visits of nuclear ships on a regular basis on the port. But yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Yorgo. At this point, I think that we have reached the end of the first session. We are about 50 minutes late, but as you know, we had a problem at the beginning, and we we suffered the same kind of delay also on the Greek strand of the morning session. Now, I think that we have like 10 minutes to rest. And Giorgos Nikolaidi, if you can put on the chat the link of the next session. The next session will be a little bit different in the sense that we on the evening set, on the afternoon session, we are focusing on a little bit on the ports and the ports of the future, and then we will have and some dedicated talks on careers in the maritime transport. So it's the topics will be different, and hopefully they will be as interesting. The presentation, the talks will be as interesting as we have seen until now on both strands, the Greek and the Cypriot, respectively. So I would like very much to thank Zacharias and Dimitris for their talks, and of course Yannis and Giorgos for their talks on the second part of the morning session. And I would very much like to welcome you all in 10-15 minutes on the second the afternoon session of the first one-day online school of the SoE experience. Thank you very much to all the speakers and to the attendees of the event. Thank you very much. Thank you, Giorgos.
Thank you. I have already posted the link. I sent a reminder email for the afternoon section, so
which is like in 10 minutes. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.